I welcome everyone to my channel. Today I would like to talk about how the deportation of Circassians to Turkey, called by the Circassians themselves a Pole, took place. So, in 1864, after the Russian Empire occupied Circassia, Circassians who did not want to accept the citizenship of the Russian Empire, and they were the overwhelming majority, were forcibly deported to the Ottoman Empire through the Black Sea. This chapter in the history of Circassians is one of the saddest. Now I will tell you how the deportation took place. Eyewitness resettlement Faunal testifies, ships were usually loaded, as they say, to the top. 300 or 400 Circassians filled the space, which at ordinary times could accommodate from 50 to 60 people. The Turkish sailors who returned told us the details of the terrible scenes. Several ships with migrants sank, on others 1/2 of the passengers who died on the road were thrown overboard. Circassian settlers of the 1860s, that is, who did not submit to the Tsarist authorities of the highlanders of the northwest of the Caucasus until 1861, who stopped resisting, but refused to move to swampy Indies, Kuban, to the plain, were forcibly driven to the Black Sea coast, often far from settlements, where they accumulated in large masses and were for months, suffering and dying from hunger, cold, infectious diseases. The latter was the reason that Russian shipowners evaded the transportation of mountaineers in every possible way, and often unscrupulous traveling salesmen went to it from the Turkish ones, who drank the ships with migrants beyond measure, which led to high mortality among immigrants also on the way. On the little Asian coast of Turkey, where ships with migrants arrived, the Circassians were waiting for quarantine camps, often not provided with proper living conditions and food. As a result, the Sultan was forced to issue a special firman forbidding the Highlanders to sell their children and wives, although in this way they rather saved their relatives from death in the camps. So, here I would like to stop. As for the sale of their children and burns, 100% will be given to people who will manipulate and reproach the Circassians for selling their wives and children to Turks, but a person who has brains on the spot, he understands that this is salvation, because in these quarantine camps people they died from infection. In order to somehow save their relatives, they went for it and sold their children and wives wherever they were in prosperity and had a chance to survive. But weakly intelligent people like to manipulate this, bringing it as an argument for the eternity of food and the self-interest of the Circassians, but this is far from the case. So here are the people who like to prescribe such a thing. I will ask you not to describe it anymore and not to be ashamed. So, we continue. Forced eviction to Turkey led to the fact that there were almost no Shapsug and Circassians left in the North Caucasus, and more than half of the Beatty, Priduk, and Sydney Circassians were evicted. In Turkey, the lion's share of the irreconcilable Kabardian Circassians has left. And so here, too, we need to stop, because there are people who also like to say that Kaport was for the Russian Empire. They fought for the Russian Empire. Did they kill their Western addicts there? No, not again. Please try to think at least somehow. I do not know, use your brains, your convolutions. Because the people who fought on the side of the Russian Empire, whether they were Kabardians, whether they were Western Ateks, are traitors. It is not necessary to judge the whole nation on their behalf. This is nonsense, because the lion's share of Chuks fought against the Russian Empire. Please remember this once and for all. That's right. The academician from Persia, who had to be an eyewitness to the resettlement movement in 1864, described, I will never forget the overwhelming impression that the Circassians made on me at Novorossiysk Bay or the court of Cali, where about 17,000 people gathered on the shore. The late inclement and cold season, almost complete lack of livelihood and ferocious shizya. Between them, epidemics of typhus and smallpox made their situation desperate, and indeed, whose heart did not shudder at the ghost, for example, a young Circassian woman in rags lying on damp soil in the open air with 3 babies, one of whom was struggling with life in immortal convulsions, while the other was looking for the removal of hunger at the breast of the already stiffened corpse of her mother, and there were many similar scenes. And also the Turks for selfish purposes. Let me remind you that the Turk was then beaten by the Russian Empire for deportation, and not vice versa. Often, Circassians recruited their ship, departed, threw out Circassians, and returned back to recruit a new crew. There is also an appeal to people in an old folk song from Stampoliak dedicated to the resettlement of Circassians in Turkey. That's how it sounds. Listen, people, listen to everything. They say the Great Caucasus Mountains want to remind you of one of the most terrible tragedies of all time. That day I went to the shore to the port. Tell me you met the writer. I was furious when I saw a tear on his bristly blitz. It is not proper for a man to cry, I screamed at the young guy. And you will see your tears soon, the writer replied and disappeared. They subdued me, that is, tears. I got to the cave. There were about 50 dead bodies in it. If you count all the dead and dying, you get about 500. A dead mother with her eyes open, a child clinging to her chest, trying to remove thirst. A child who was crying was split off and tried to call his mother to feed him. He was lying near his mother's breast. The poor baby was crying, dying of hunger. His patch made my heart shudder, and the situation of people caused more and more pain. Soon the baby stopped crying. He died barely having time to open his tiny quasks. I took my purka and covered her mother. Her mother and her son. As the writer said, I saw my tears on my purka. Stopping, I prayed loudly, to those who can hear me, to those who can come at this critical moment. All those who left their homeland were fleeing from the plague in Turkey. Most of them disappeared at sea or died of diseases, and their bodies were eaten by worms and insects. The rest are clogged with a hammer, locked in gorges, they disappeared in unfamiliar mountains and valleys. They were scattered and left to die. Then you swear that you love our people and will be happy if the Kurds survive. If this is true, then what did you do when you were helpless and died, and our women, whose bodies are worthless, were taken to Caribs? How did you allow such an injustice? You saw everything with your own eyes. Why didn't you talk and write about it? Now you say that you are the people of Shebel, then you say that you are sent by the Caliph, then you say that you are not sent by the regiment. Why are you deceiving us? Where did you come from? Aren't people like that? I'm afraid of people like you. By what laws should your people be buried? On your graves there is blood with a snake's head. The earth refuses to take over the group when you dig the earth. Your graves reflect what you are doing. You are looking for a devil. Fire and earth will look the same in your ATU, do not cause suffering. All you deserve is to become a food for the leash snakes. The curse of the people will reach you, misery will end misery. The future of those who have survived and will pass through this pain is blessed. So, this is an excerpt from a song From There to the Pole, for which I have already made a video. If you are interested, then you can watch this video, I will leave a link in the description. So, this video comes to an end. If you have a desire to somehow help the project in development, then you can donate money by going to the description, there is a link there. You can go through this link and donate money to me. Thank you all for watching, do not forget to like, write comments and of course subscribe to the channel. Thanks to everyone, bye to everyone.